councilors, I don't need to say all your names. All of us are here. I do? Well, let's start with Councilor Hogan.
Madam President.
Councilor Hogan, Councilor Caldwell, Councilor... You all right?
Councilor
You
Gathers.
in? You in? Councilor Gathers, Councilor Mantle, Councilor Peniawa, Madam President, of course, Councilor Green, myself, yours and dearly, Councilor Majuk, Councilor Allen, Councilor Choles, and I'm joined by our COO, Corey Driscoll, and our Budget Director, Rudd. Rudd, that's it. So we are going to start first by giving it to you to just walk us through, and then it will be followed by questions right after. Take it away.
Thank you, Councilor, and thanks to the entire council for having us. I'm just going to give a quick overview and then throw it to Director Rudd to walk through some of the details. I also just wanted to make sure we acknowledge the SPD leadership that is here with us today. So we have First Deputy Chief Schaaf, Deputy Chief Trudell, Deputy Chief Shulsky, Deputy Chief Russin. Deputy Chiefs Trudell and Shulsky were part of the negotiating team this time around. So just as a quick overview of where we're at, so as many of you know, our latest contract with PBA expired at the end of last year, so at the end of 2020. And to our knowledge, this is the first time, at least I know, Deputy Chief Schaaf, since you've been here, that we have a contract negotiated in short order of when the previous one expired. So that's nice to not have things out of contract for long periods of time. But what we're proposing today as part of the tentative agreement is a 5-year contract, so that would be from January of this year through December of 2027. The wage increases, which Director Rudd will walk through, are a 1.75% increase every 6 months for the 5 years of the contract. The average annual cost increase is roughly $2.2 million. Again, Director Rudd will go through these details. And really, heading into negotiations, the wage increases and the compensation was really, as it is in most contracts, primary. You know, the SPD has not only had, we all know that the challenges that they've had in terms of retirements, but also in recent years they've had resignations, which isn't something that really had been an issue in the past. People transferring out of the department, oftentimes going to work for another law enforcement agency, but not SPD. And so we really need to make sure our compensation was competitive, you know, with our neighboring agencies. The other priority heading into negotiations was the work schedule. So right now, as many of you know, it's a 4-2 work schedule, 4 days on, 2 days off. This proposes a 4-3-4-4 work schedule, which Director Rudd will walk you through. But you know, we really think this is a more efficient use of SPD resources and the patrol officers in particular. In order to make that work schedule work, we made it clear to PBA that we had to make adjustments to sick leave and using both a carrot and a stick approach to incentivize folks to discourage excessive sick leave use. And so that's part of this tentative agreement as well. And then there are other things that, you know, once we get past some of walking through those issues, that we can also talk about some other changes that are in the tentative agreement. But for right now, I will pass it on to Director Rudd.
Thank you, Corey. Real quick, before I jump into all the numbers, I just wanted to say, first of all, to all the sworn officers of the Syracuse Police Department, my wife's a paramedic, and I believe she's a hero, and she regularly tells me stories of your everyday heroism. SPD has the type of heroes who make it so she can do her part in the hero universe. We're also blessed to have a house full of kids. Like all parents, we try to prepare our children for the world that they will live within and shape. In their world, I promise that you are all heroes worthy of our utmost respect. In our worst moments, we call you, and we expect nothing short of heroics every minute of every day. As an adult, I know that you all do not actually have superpowers. You're actually regular people with lives and emotions and families and ups and downs, just like the rest of us. And with that, I would say thank you, Syracuse Police, for your service to our community. Now I get to dive into this contract a bit, which is fun. So, counselors, thank you for that. So this first, what's that?
We were clapping for them.
That's all. I know, it is. There's no spreadsheets, no numbers to go over if they're not here doing the work, right? So, So I think the first thing is just this is a 1.75% COLA every 6 months, which is a little different than when we typically describe it. We typically talk about it in an annual basis. So this is my attempt at doing the math to show you what it would be annualized. So it's the equivalent to the first year of a 2.6% COLA, followed by a little over 3.5 each of the additional years. Alternatively, you could think of it of what would it be if we gave the same pay raise each of the years, which is how a lot of collective bargaining works, and it would have been a 3.35% COLA. So that just kind of translates that. The next slide shows the cost by year. So here you could see that for salaries and fringe, we're at 60.8 million right now. And I just project that into the future as if nothing would change without an agreement. And I put the salary increases on it, and I say it goes up by roughly 2.2 million a year. That's the average that it goes up over the time. So in the beginning, it's going up less, 1.6, 2.2, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, but it kind of works out to roughly 2.2 more a year. You can see the percentage change at the bottom. So at the end of 5 years, we're roughly 18% more expensive than we are today.
Let me ask you this question, Commissioner. So I think you said that with the percentage changes that it all balances out to be the same, correct?
What do you mean by with the percentage changes?
Go ahead. I kind of lost everything I had in my head.
That's okay.
So just along those lines, the 2.6% for 2023, right? Is it because it's going to start in the middle of the year? That's why it's less than the other years?
So the nature to this split is that it ends up, like you might think 1.75 plus 1.75 is going to be 3.5, but there's a delay. So the first pay raise is actually just 1.75. So you kind of have that savings, I guess, rolled into the future. So it ends up being lower initially. That's why that first year is only 2.6% more, but then it's like 3.5 each of the additional years.
Okay.
Any questions on that? So from there, it just goes into like, what does this mean for the typical officer? So this is the table by title. So you have the 6 steps of police officers, sergeant, lieutenant, and captain, and you can see what their pay is now and where they will be at the end of this time period, 5 years. Also, it's worth highlighting that there were steps for sergeant, lieutenant, and captain where the pay was lower for the first 3 years in the position, and as part of this agreement, it eliminated that pay. So anybody who enters the title would enter at the higher pay rate.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So this would bring our SPD closer to the other municipalities' pay rates?
So I do have some, Deputy Chief Rich Trudell, I do have some data on that because that's typically asked. So I would say that makes us competitive. We're behind Buffalo and Rochester, and I have these numbers that I can provide. We're behind Buffalo and Rochester. We'd be making more than DeWitt in the Sheriff's Department, less than Oswego and Ithaca, and more than Geddes. So I would say that we are definitely competitive in terms of salary. Now, a contract is a whole bunch of different things, right? Sick incentives and longevity and health insurance. So, but in terms of salary, this would make us competitive.
Okay, the salary and the benefits as well, right? Would bring us comparable in both areas.
Yeah, like I said, it's, this, schedule is a big one, right? When a prospective employee looks at your department, one of the things they look at obviously is salary, but they also look at the schedule. And that's why we went for the schedule that we did in this contract, to be competitive with our neighboring agencies.
The removal of the steps, is that driven by PBA, or is that something we wanted to incentivize people taking promotions?
So it was something we had agreed to in the what ended up being the arbitration award, but the police department the leadership found that it really wasn't getting candidates. We gave these increases to make sure that there was enough of a gap between the patrol officers and those people that would be supervising them. And so we tried it, but SPD was finding that, having that two-tier system wasn't really encouraging the type of folks and the number of folks and the diversity of folks that we wanted to have in leadership positions at SPD. So the tiers were initially a PBA recommendation under a previous president, but seeing that play out, SPD and PBA agreed that, it's not working out the way we need to, and so having that two-tier system was just not getting the candidates that we wanted to have.
Along those lines, Corey, and maybe Chief Trudell, does this, a first-time police officer, are these salaries comparative to the other? When, our first time an officer is, sworn in?
Mm-hmm.
Is
You mean
it the
other?
same as somebody from the town of Geddes?
So, I mean, I think,
Are we about the same?
yeah, I think that's what Chief Trudell was just saying, that we're, more than DeWitt, we're less than Oswego,
So
we're,
you were talking about the first-year police officer?
We're talking about the whole salary stats, comparing the different salary stats.
Because obviously we're understaffed, we're in competition, people just out of college want to be a police officer, they're saying town of Geddes pays me $2,000 more.
Right.
So knowing that there's different steps, all right? So we are less than Buffalo at the step 5 officer, but we're more than Buffalo at the entry level,
Okay, so that's
right?
what I mean.
So we are very competitive with other agencies in terms of salary. And when you add up all of the other parts of the package, schedule, sick incentive, health insurance, we're very competitive to our neighboring agencies.
But
Very competitive.
we know that young people.
They look at salary, right? Right, absolutely. And that is, and this data I have for you as well.
Chief, what's the base pay now?
So the current base pay is 53.8 for a starting police officer.
Okay.
So at step 5, I would assume that that's after an officer been here for 5 years, right? For 5 years, the base salary would be 80,000? Okay.
Well, 5 years from now. So I think if you were thinking of entering the department now, you could say, with the new agreement, I'm gonna make $55,000 the first year, but after 5 years, I'm gonna be making $94,000.
What about experience? If somebody is transferring from maybe DeWitt with 5 years, would we start them there, or how does that work?
We have an officer lateral over to our department. They start at the year that they're at their other agency. So if they have 5 years on with DeWitt and then they transfer to us, they'd be at the 5-year mark with SPD.
So if they were making 70,000 in DeWitt and they transfer to Syracuse, they would transfer with that 70,000?
well, they would
They would come
make
to our
what-
step 5.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Plus,
okay.
we also had the $10,000 lateral incentive too, so that they would get that once they were off probation as well.
I think our concern is the competition,
Yeah, it is,
As
it
long
is.
as we get those people, they look at us first.
I want to be a cop.
Do we get lateral? Do we get lateral coming into our departments?
We haven't had one since we put in the lateral incentive, no. It's been a couple years since we've had laterals come over.
And Ken, one quickie, another one. So we know that Syracuse University, they have sworn officers. Ken,
They have peace officers.
Oh, they have peace
Yeah,
officers.
they're not
so-
fully sworn officers anymore. They found that when they made them police officers, they all left and came to us, so I wish they would go back.
I was just wondering that. That's what I was wondering when you come to us.
That should have been a secret.
It was for a little while, then they figured it out. Because they'd send them to our academy, so.
Hey, I was trying to get some more officers.
So, real quick, upstate officers, the officers are peace officers too?
Nope, they're police officers. They actually come through our academy, so they're fully sworn officers.
Oh, so DPS runs their own academy?
Yes, the SU runs their own academy.
We can't steal some?
I mean, they'd have to go through the whole civil service process, so yeah, we try.
So, but just can't execute it. Warrant. That's it.
All right, and then the last kind of like really dollar-centered one is just the effect on incentive pay. So incentive pay was added in the previous contract, and it's a different percentage based on your education or language or military experience. And it's basically a function of step 5 the step 5 police officer. So if you're a step 1 police officer, you would still get 3% of the step 5 pay as that incentive. Same if you were a captain, you would get 3% of the step 5 pay.
Is this current or is this new?
So this shows what it will be moving forward. So essentially, if you were an officer who had a college, like a 4-year degree, you would say 5 years from now. So if I were that 5-year officer, I would add, so if I'm at 81 in the 5th year right now, I would add the 2,400 to my pay, and then that would basically be my.
But it's not new to this contract. These incentives were in the previous contract, so it's not that this is, Tim is just demonstrating that as a percentage, as the salaries increase, the incentive cost actually increases too, but this isn't anything new to this contract.
Can you remind me, can you combine certain ones? Like
No. You can only go with, if you have, if you're a veteran and you also have a master's degree, you get the master's degree. You can't combine them.
So the higher of the.
So the higher, yes.
So I guess just as somebody that is not a great numbers person. So for the 0 years where you look at the starting salary, right, 53.8. So the progression there, what's the progression? Like you see 58, and then here the last is like 63,992. Where is that going? And you are on the first year.
Go back.
Well, I guess if you were gonna start now with this new contract, you would start at 54.7. 6 months from now, you would get a bump to 55.7.
Okay.
And then you would become a step 1. So then you would get a bump to 70,000, then 71,000. Then you would be a step 2 officer. So you'd go down again, but you're kind of going
Makes sense.
down into new steps, but you're going across into the future. So you could follow it's going to go up.
So step 0 will be if you're in the academy and you graduate. And
Step 0 is like you haven't been here a year yet, and
Gotcha.
then you become step 1 on your 1 year.
I don't know if somebody already asked this and maybe I missed it, but if somebody comes with experience from another police force, from close to us, and they have 3 years of experience, do they start at 0 or at 3?
No, I think that's what Chief Selski was mentioning.
Oh, that's
If
what
you,
you were
yes,
saying. Oh, okay.
if you're coming in with 3 years with a DeWitt police, then those 3 years count.
All right.
Yeah, you don't have to start at 0.
So the chiefs stay the same, right?
The chiefs are not, they're separate than PBA. They're not under PBA's contract.
They're appointed.
They
They
are
have their own
appointed.
contract, right? Or does it
Chief,
file?
when we're losing officers to other agencies, where in the years of service are we losing them? Are we losing them in the first year?
We're losing them in the first 5 years. We've had a couple that would have 6 or 7 years on, but they are younger officers that are leaving. Some are leaving in their first year. And again, when we do exit interviews and we exit interview everybody that will, they tell us 2 things. The first thing we hear is schedule, and we haven't gotten to that yet. And the other thing that we hear is the type of policing in an urban city is challenging, obviously.
I was wondering about that.
So Chief, and remind me again, maybe you've said this in our previous committee meetings. If an officer leave early, is it, as they enter into academy, is there a time period that they must stay? And they, or if, right?
So
And
we're
what
talking
does-
about residency in the city?
No, so we put them through our academy, right?
Yep.
And they decide to take their skills somewhere else, right? Is
Yeah.
right? How many years are we?
So there is something in the books that says they have to stay for 3 years, or else we can get compensation from the agency that they're going to.
Okay.
Now, we have tried that, and I don't think to date we have been successful at all in getting any reimbursement on that. And we've tried through corp counsel to do that. So there's really, even though that rule is on the books, there's no teeth in getting that money back.
How do you get teased for that?
What's that?
What are such?
That's, I don't want to put corp counsel on the spot, but I don't know the reason why we can't.
Okay, we'll follow up on that.
Yeah.
We'll follow up.
Yeah.
So for those that get the $10,000 incentive, if they leave, what happens to that? It's the same thing, we just don't get our money back?
So They don't get a $10,000 incentive for a new hire. That's a different amount of
Right, for
money.
the ones, like transfers, the one that's coming from like another town or city, if they come over, they're getting a $10,000.
Well, yes, yep.
So
And
what if they come and they only stay for a year? If they leave
They-
and go somewhere
yeah.
else, how do we get that back, or we don't? We just
Don't.
lose it?
don't. You know, and Chief Cecil's been very clear, for the officers that left us and went to other agencies, we will pay them the $10,000 for them to come back. Because those are quality officers and we need those officers. So we will, and I'm putting the pitch out there for people that are hearing this, we will take them back.
So if somebody comes to the academy already with, let's say, an associate's, so once they go through the academy, then the incentive kicks in?
Yes.
Is it
Yep, they get the incentive. Yep, absolutely.
I gotta ask this question. You said, when Councilor Allen asked you about the ones that come in and get the 10,000, then they leave. Then we'll go and offer them 10,000 again to come back. So, oh, okay.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the officers that have left us in the past, right? We've just talked about record numbers of resignation, 22 in 2021 left us. We will pay them the $10,000 to come back.
Okay, okay. So they didn't get the first 10,000, but you'll pay them 10 to come back over, okay?
Was that a record number?
Yeah, that
22?
was
I mean,
unheard of.
Pandemic and all the other things that were happening.
Absolutely
in our
unheard
world
of. And we've had,
affect
I think
that?
there was 8 the following year, which is even higher than usual. But, you know, it's slowed a little bit, but we recognize it's still a huge problem. And that is the whole mindset of why we went into this contract with retention and recruitment. How can we recruit officers to come work for the city of Syracuse, and how can we retain them once they're here?
What about the level of diversity in people leaving? Was it pretty much the same, or was there just, do you see?
Yeah, I would not be able to, I mean, we certainly have the demographics of the officers that left us, but I would not be able to put my finger on, you know, any certain statistic within that. We have the numbers, certainly, that we could provide, but I don't think there was any real trend
Okay.
or
Okay, that's
significance to any of the data there.
So as Chief Trudell mentioned, the schedule was a major factor that many folks that transferred out of the department mentioned, and, you know, as a city and as a community, we've talked about making changes to the schedule. And so, again, Director Rudd will walk us through the changes that we're making to SPD's schedule, particularly related to patrol.
I got one more question as well. Sorry about that. Going back to the incentive pay increase, where it says masters or language, is that a person that has a language?
So you either have a master's degree or you can demonstrate a proficiency in a particular language, and we have an outside agency that verifies, you know, you have to take a test that verifies that you are proficient in Spanish or Mandarin or, you know, some sort of language. So, but it's either that or a master's degree.
And Councilor Majok, how many languages can you speak?
Ain't too old.
You'd still only get one incentive payment.
Oh my God. So is it any language, or are there specific major languages that you have to?
No, at this point, it's really just any language.
How many people have it, do we know?
I don't know if we have,
14 and 50, I think was the last number. I just pulled it.
yeah,
Bring her on there.
yeah.
So the next part's the work schedule, right? So there's kind of a number of slides where we can go through it, but just the big picture things are officers will work the same number of hours each year. So they're gonna work 2 hours more per day. And because of that, they come to work 49 fewer times per year. This turns out to be a good thing because we are able to deploy them more efficiently. So it increases the typical number of officers at higher demand times, and it decreases the typical number of officers at lower demand times, and we'll show you that in a minute. It also introduces a power day every 15th day where you have twice as many officers as a typical day, and that allows for scheduling to be, training to be scheduled more efficiently, and it'll allow for a number of new activities. So just about the work schedule change. So it really affects patrol. So it's a new patrol work schedule. So there's 290 patrol officers. So They're going to go from a 6-day week to a 15-day week. Before it was 4 on, 2 off. As Corey said earlier, now it's going to be 4 on, 3 off, 4 on, 4 off. So long story short, they're going to, instead of 4 8-hour shifts, they'll have 10-hour shifts on a 15-day rotating schedule.
So what's a power day, Rudd?
So let's.
Am I ahead of you?
We're gonna get to.
Oh, never mind.
We will definitely get there. I think that's, so before we go to the power day, I'd go through the typical day.
Yeah,
So the next
typical.
slide
Yes.
shows essentially officers being able to be deployed more efficiently. So I'm just going to read the takeaway because the proposed schedule increases the typical number of officers at higher demand times, so when we need officers, and decreases them at typical times when we need fewer. The contract also has language that says if these demand times, these peak demand times change, the leadership can adjust the schedule such that they're still on peak demand times. So when you look at the current typical day, so right now, this shows a 24-hour period, right? And we have A watch, B watch, and C watch, and they're staggered starts. So it's really like A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. And you can see how many officers would be scheduled at any given hour of the day and how many there would be typically. And then you can see the number of officer hours per day. This is the same every day of the 6-day work week, so it's the same every day all year. These numbers are basically like assumed we're fully staffed, and it doesn't account for like vacation and sick leave and all those things.
Tim, can I ask you a quick question? I'm looking at the shifts and I'm looking at how the officers are staggered. So just by some fluke, if we had an influx of officers come in, you would have to readjust the work schedule, right?
Well, I think they would be go ahead, I would let you speak to it.
So if we had officers coming in, the patrol chief, Chief Russin, would look at the schedule, talk to his captains, and where he had gaps in his schedule, he would put those folks in those gaps. So it would depend on where, folks were leaving from, where we were seeing, based on the data, higher points during the day, those officers would get filtered into those spots.
Because we're gonna have an influx.
I like the optimistic thinking. After Director Rudd's opening statement, I don't know why we wouldn't.
He's trying to get served at Swallows.
One step at a time. I really just want a PBA pass for my bicycle. But one thing I would highlight about the way this thing works now is if you think about it, there's 24 hours in a day, there's 3 shifts, 8 hours apiece, right? So 3 times 8, 24, 24 divided by 8, 3, it all works out, but that means there's no overlap. So in the new, there's gonna be A watch, B watch, C watch, we don't have to stagger them anymore, but now they're gonna work 10-hour shifts. So 3 times 10 is 30. Okay, so now you have 6 hours of overlap. That's the thing that's really different that allows it to be more efficient. So here, you could see that at 8 p.m., when we used to have 48, now we have 66. Okay, so from 8, 9, 10, 11, our staffing is substantially higher than it currently is. And then at times like 6 a.m. we have 38 right now. We would only have 27. So it kind of allows for this shift. What's that?
Right.
The other peak time is around 2 p.m. and 3 p.m., which is basically school dismissal, which you could probably also figure out ways to deploy the additional officers.
So how would that affect like availability of officers for overtime shifts, like at the events and all that? I mean, is that gonna impact it negatively, or?
So certainly during those hours, I think I understand your question. Certainly during those hours between 8 and 11 p.m., we're going to be able to do more, right? More than what we're doing right now. If we want to put out gun violence details, quality of life cars, that sort of thing, we'll have the opportunity to do that because we'll have those extra officers then. So there still may be need for overtime for summer deployment on different hours, but certainly during those hours when we have all those officers working, we're going to be able to do more. And that's one of the things we liked about this schedule.
Well, with all those officers working like that on regular police schedule, what about those officers that are needed for like all the festivals downtown and all that? Because they happen at night too. Will you be able to still?
Yes, we'll be able to staff those. And remember, officers.
Housing authority too. You use
right. Officers are going to have more days off, so they're going to have opportunities to work overtime on those days off as well.
So about the 10-hour shift, I would imagine after 9 hours working, our employees are going to be very tired. We're comfortable with this, that they're going to be able to be safe, and other cities have done this and they feel good about it?
Absolutely. All of the police executive research forum studies show that a 10-hour day is optimal. When you start going to a 12-hour day, then you start to see exhaustion and you start to see overtime costs. On a 10-hour day, the experts will tell you that overtime gets reduced. On the typical patrol type calls, overtime will get reduced. But yeah, and even the union polled their members, and the overall sentiment was that the 10-hour day would be good for them.
Now, and thank you for bringing up the overtime situation. So with that, have we maybe, Corey, look at the cost and the saving, not the cost, the saving in terms of overtime, because we have been talking about overtime and the cost of overtime. Do we see this as maybe a factor to kind of reduce that, and what does that look like?
Well, I think
for
We can
quantify
on top of to council, because I want to add in on that overtime. So when they're doing these 10-hour shifts, it's not their regular 8. Do they get paid overtime for those extra 2, or that's just
Straight time. That's straight time. That's their shift.
I mean, I think the overtime question is unknown, but I think what's clear is that, especially given what we're going to talk about, the 15th day and the ability to schedule training, that it will free up a lot of traditional overtime to do different, hopefully more like impactful overtime, because they won't be, like, you could have a situation where you send people to go training and you have to backfill creating overtime for the regular duties. Like, a lot of that's going to go away. So I think there's just efficiency gains to the system, and then it becomes, how does it play out? But and there's probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think there are overtime savings in this contract, and I think when I was shaking my head, I'm thinking more along the sick time sort of thing, right? Because the backfill on sick, and we're going to get to that. But I also think there's efficiencies to that power day that I think somebody asked about the power day. That's the next slide. If you look at this slide right here that's up right now, there's 62 hours difference between the current schedule that we are working to the one we were going to be proposing, right? 62-hour difference. We think that we can make that up in the power day in terms of training and efficiencies on that power day. It's 62 hours. It's 6 10-hour shifts. We can make that up, making our proposed schedule more efficient based on being able to staff when it's higher call load, and efficiencies in that power day, making up training, reduce sick time, reduce vacation time, to make up that 62 hours easily. It's 62 hours. We can make that up.
And Chief, another question, when you said that quality of life issues. So with this schedule now, when people call me when there's games up there, they're gonna be able to go through those streets and ticket and move those cars and all that good stuff?
So during those times when we have more officers and on the power days, we're definitely gonna be able to do more, for sure, 100%. We're gonna have more officers to do that. And I think that when you get into that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, you can finish.
That power day is a key part of the schedule, right? Because if you look at this, I'm sorry, that previous slide, you're working less hours, but that power day of 26 days a week, and Tim's really gonna be able to explain that, that makes up the time away from the previous slide. Would more than make it up.
I was just also gonna ask, what about those 911 calls and maybe other emergencies where we have decreased from 40 to 30 and 36 to 27? Are we gonna be able to handle those?
Yes, we think so, because remember that, our schedule right now, we have to staff for every hour of the day the same, right? So at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's definitely reduced calls, right? But we have to staff that with, just to throw the exact number out, we have to staff that with the 38 officers, right? Or 36 officers, when we don't really need it at 6 o'clock in the morning. But we have to staff that so that when we get to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we have enough bodies to hit that 36, right? So yes, we feel like we'll be able to hold the line with the calls for service with that reduction, and then make up for it, in the afternoon hours and in the evening hours when we have that many more officers working.
So I'm still I'm still on the overtime, still hooked on that. So just to understand this, right? Obviously at 8 o'clock, from the the current, you got 48, with the new proposal is 66, that's more officers, you know. In terms of the saving, because I'm still stuck on the money part, right? In terms of the saving, maybe this is Tim Roth's question, right? It's not for you. I think you're right. Right? In terms of the saving, right, and I don't expect you to know now, could you figure out in terms of, say for 1 week, if we are utilizing less officers and we are, in this sense, we are efficient in a sense.
I actually have a really good answer for that.
Right? We are, in a sense, we are efficient, right? In a sense, we are efficient. What does that efficiency translate into dollars? How?
So right now, we know exactly how much money we are spending in minimum staffing and patrol. We have a PC number, and we can track, and we have tracked for the last couple of years, the overtime, right?
Yeah.
So going forward, from the point when we institute this schedule, going forward, we'll have a PC number for how much money we are spending to get to that minimum staffing and patrol under the new schedule. So we will be able to compare apples to apples between that. So we'll know what if it costs different.
I like that, because, you know, there gotta be a figure somehow, a day.
But it's gonna take us
Right.
going to the schedule to understand that, and the contract has certain parameters built into it.
Right.
Number of calls waiting, the amount of overtime, the number of times we have to order officers in, so we can compare old to new and decide if the schedule is working for us.
So there won't be a situation where a platoon's light, three officers light, you have to call 3 officers in for time and a half
Exactly.
to work with the guys that are the regular shift.
That's what we'll be able to measure.
Because if you see this gives you a lot of inherent being nimble, as far as like addressing problems and everything, so.
Certainly on those hours, and then on the power days, we're gonna be able to do so much more. It's gonna take some administrative changes on our end, right? Because right now we train differently. We're gonna have to train during those 26 days of the year. That's no small task. I know that our training division is working on that hard right now. It's no small task, but there are efficiencies we can get through that.
So those power days will be sort of like, you'll be able to maybe flood some neighborhoods like.
Yes, that's quality of life. Yes, absolutely. That's what we're talking about.
So I know at the beginning of shifts, you'll do a roll call, right? And
I'm sorry?
at the beginning of shifts, you normally do a roll call. How long does that normally take?
15 minutes, if that.
So in theory, does this give us a greater percentage of time the officers can be on the road, because 15 minutes of an 8-hour shift is a lower percentage?
15 minutes of an 8-hour day is lower percentage than, or is a higher percentage than.
We're saying the
10-hour
same
day.
thing, yeah.
We're saying the same thing,
Right.
yeah.
Perfect, okay.
Chief, I have one before you go. If you have 5 officers call in sick on a Monday, do you call in 5 other officers that, and if that's a yes, are we making sure we're not calling in 5 that just worked 4 10s in a row?
So, yes, we will look at how much time they have worked in the past, right?
Okay.
But this schedule is only one part of the contract. In order to do this schedule, and we're going to get to this, in order to do this schedule, we had to change the way we hand out sick time in the rules, the work rules by which officers can take sick time. It was a major component of this. We couldn't do schedule without sick. So to answer your question, patrol shifts have a minimum staffing and a critical staffing. If people call in sick and move us below critical staffing, then we will order people in to go, right? Because we need bodies on the street to take calls. But, again, this is only one portion of this contract. We really feel like we have worked hard to reduce sick time, and we're going to get to that because that keys in right into your question.
One point, just the Corey was kind of leading to, and I was thinking also, is the language in the contract that does point to the study that you all are commissioning. And I think to say, look at overtime, I think this is a thing that makes it so overtime could be reduced, or it could be repurposed, or any number of things, and it's going to depend on how people manage the situation. But it is an area that you could essentially have the independent people look at and kind of like maybe talk about the interaction with the minimum staffing numbers and what that means for regular overtime.
And we're gonna get us a 6-month update, correct? To see where we landed at with this contract.
Yes, yeah, well, I mean, we'd, to give us 6 months to try it out, and happy to provide how it's performing. You know, and I think Tim references, but just to read the language, that in the tentative agreement, it says, the city will make any determination to revert back to the previous schedule based upon data and information regarding overtime utilization, ordering in usage, the number of calls for service, and corresponding wait times, or other such operational factors. So, we came to an agreement as part of this tentative agreement that, SPD leadership is going to look at factors like that to determine whether or not the schedule is working. And if, we don't anticipate this, but if for some reason, SPD leadership feels it's best to revert back to the previous schedule, this contract allows us to do it. So it's not as if we're locked in.
And I get that, but if that was the case, we wouldn't revert all of it. We'll find out what's working, right?
Right. Yeah, I can't imagine a scenario, but I also don't want to jinx it where, we would go, given the efficiencies that this schedule gives us, I would find it hard to believe why we would revert back to the less efficient schedule. But this tentative agreement does provide us that flexibility.
And Chief Trudell look excited about this, so it's gonna work.
It is going to work.
It's definitely gonna work.
All right. I think are we on the power day? Or we past
So,
the power day?
I mean, I think we're probably partly through it, but the power day, it has twice as many people. So I think, based on all the answers I've heard in the previous briefings, it seems like a quarter of the power days are gonna be used pretty much exclusively for training, based on all the requirements they have to deal with. But that's still an improvement, because you're not taking them off of their regular duties.
So this slide says power day every 15th, but you mentioned 26. What's the difference between the two?
Yes, every 15 days, that's twice a month.
Yep.
Well, it's 12 months times 2 is 26, so you get 26 power days.
Okay, thank you.
260 hours of training, or other types of details.
Are we on power days questions? So what is that? Is that a day off? Is that a training day?
Yeah,
What is
so
that?
basically the way the schedule works, everybody in patrol is working on a power day. So you have twice as many officers. So take that schedule that's on there and double it. So what that allows us to do is take half and work patrol just like we would normally, and then the other half, we can schedule training. We can schedule quality of life walking beats. We can schedule gun violence reduction strategies. We can take those extra bodies, I'm sorry?
Community events.
Yes.
We're gonna get horses?
Probably not.
Will they,
We have what?
so will they swap out? So like if I'm an officer and I'm on patrol, like the first power day of the month, the second power day of the month, will I be in training or?
Yes, I think that's exactly the way they're looking at doing it. Now, there's a lot to be worked out. I mean, this is a major lift for our training division, and I want to give them credit for the work that they're going to be doing on this. But this is a major change from the way we do things now. Because on that current schedule that you saw, you may see 48 hours, but I'll bet you there's a 10% or more loss to training in that schedule every day. Because it's not just in service, it's everything else that we do, from SWAT to other things that if we shift to those 26 power days, we can do the training then. It'll be different, but
Is this the
doable.
first time the police contract has been modified this drastically?
So when I came on, we worked a 4-2-5-2, and then we switched to a 4-2. That would be a comparable schedule change at that time. That was 94, 93.
You've been here that long?
Thank you.
Everybody got a joke. All right, Tim, we're gonna stop interrupting you.
Okay.
No problem. That's what is your show. And I guess these have all probably been mentioned, but the benefits of more efficient scheduling: address peak call volume periods, complete patrols in target areas, conduct walking beats and bike patrols, address quality of life crimes, participate in community engagement. Any other questions about the schedule or so the next thing is really just all the sick leave adjustments. So I would describe them as a suite of changes. So like we can't have, with the adjusted timeline, we would want less people calling out on average. So to do that, one, their allotments are decreased, so the rate at which they're earning sick leave goes down. The incentive for not using any sick leave goes up, and a whole bunch of work rules. So there's a slide on each of those. So the first one, just reducing what they get. So in the current agreement, in the first year, you can basically accrue, 120 if you do the math. But then you're getting 160 hours for the first 5 years, per year, 200 in year 6 to 10, 240 in 11 to 15, in the 11th to 15th year, and 280 hours per calendar year, 16 years and after. So in this new proposal, it goes to a more consolidated tier, so years 1 through 9 will be 160 hours, and 10 years and after will be 208. So it's just reducing the overall amount in the system.
So I guess my question along that is, when officers get these many hours, right, and they get at the end of the year, if they didn't use them, they get to keep them, right? That's the idea. And the whole idea of this is to give them flexibility so that they don't have to use their personal and vacation days, right? That's the general idea?
For sick, yes. If they're
For sick.
sick, they can
Okay.
use sick days as opposed to their personal and vacation. But there's money associated to the reduction in sick time, right? Because to your point, they can hold on to their sick time up to a certain point, and then they can cash that in. So this overall reduction in the number of sick days limits that cash out at the end, but it also limits the amount of sick time throughout the year, and that is backfill overtime dollars for us that we're saving. So reducing the overall sick time is money savings for the city as well. And it's significant. Some of these folks are losing 72 hours a year in sick time, between 32 and 72 hours.
They cash out at the same rate they get paid.
So I'm pretty sure that they cash out at the rate they're making when they retire.
Oh, okay.
Which is, not to jump ahead, but that's another advantage of one of the sick leave proposals, for selling it back, because then by selling that time back, we're paying you at the rate that you're at right now, and then you're not accumulating those days. Those days are being sold back. So that if you're, a patrol officer right now, we're paying you at that officer rate, as opposed to you banking those hours till you're a captain, and then we're paying you out of the captain rate.
That was my question.
So I mean, it will happen over time, but there's a way to try and reduce the overall amount of sick leave.
So what happens with the hours right now?
What do you mean, in terms of?
They have hours banked.
Yeah, you can bank, I don't know how much
So like 9.
that you can bank, and then after that, then you could, yeah.
Or you use it, but that's
Or you burn it.
right.
Right, and that's what some of the provisions that we put in place to prevent people, I know I'm about to retire in a couple years, I've got a lot of sick time, I'm past my cap, so I'm gonna, start calling in sick I'm not saying this happens in SPD, or that if it does, it's exclusive to SPD, because I think it happens in a bunch of other places, and that's why through these contracts, we've been putting in provisions to rein in sick time, that you can't just start, well, now I'm just gonna call in sick every Friday for the next 2 years so that I don't lose that time, so I can burn it. By putting these provisions in for sick time, which we did with Local 400 and other contracts, we're trying to rein in that sick time use. You need to actually, if it's a pattern, you need to actually demonstrate that you're sick.
So,
Just a part to that real quick. I didn't sound like she about to ask that. So the hours that they already have, starting the contract.
So, nobody's losing any sick time. It's just that going forward, you won't be able, because there's an overall reduction in the accruals, you won't be, earning as much sick time, I guess. The accrual overall reduces. So, if I've been working for the city 2 years and I've got, 20 sick days per year, and they change it to 10, I don't lose those 40 sick days that I've earned, but going forward, I'm only gonna get 10.
So it's really just for the newcomers, because anybody that.
Well, or just existing officers going forward. If you were somebody that got, 25 sick days last year, well, you're only getting 20 going forward, or whatever the numbers are. But it's a reduction for everybody.
But with the staffing and this adjustment of sick time, this just basically puts more police on the street. That's what's going to happen as far as that goes.
Right.
Because, traditionally, a guy has a boat or something like that, he might want to call in sick on a nice July weekend.
But
in the end, this.
Well, and that's what, between the previous contract that just ended with PBA, where we reined in bonus time, and now reining in sick time, the goal is to get more officers on the
This
street.
is radical right here. They're losing a lot of hours. mean,
So, Chief Trudell, did I hear you when you said, did you say that if they don't use them, they lose them?
If they've earned to their cap, and the cap is in the contract, previous contract, if they're at their cap and they earn additional beyond that, they don't get that, they lose that.
And the cap is the 200 that you were saying.
Don't know the exact number we were just talking about. 280, somewhere around there, but we can get you the exact number what the cap is.
But they can cash it out if they wanted to. Can they cash out
The
or no?
excess.
Not beyond the cap.
Not beyond the cap currently.
Right, but if they get up to 280, say they're at like 275, could they go in and just cash out 75 hours? Just
At
to-
the retirement, they do that.
Okay.
Now, and we are gonna get to this, under the new incentive, right, they can turn in sick time, again, a benefit for us,
Okay.
for a sick incentive if they don't use it. But that's another slide. But currently, it's only at retirement, and it's up to a certain amount of sick time.
Yeah, but now you're giving us something, sick incentive. I want to know about that.
So just to quickly just go through some of the ways in which the work rules address sick leave. So these are some of the provisions agreed to in the tentative agreement. You know, if a member calls in sick, they're ineligible for voluntary overtime for 48 hours. So if you called in sick, you can't work the dome that night, unless you are ordered in to do so because leadership needs you to do it, but you can't volunteer for it. If you submitted a time off request that was denied, and then you took a sick day instead, you know, there's a note that you have to have from your physician to say why coincidentally you tried to get the day off, and then when we said no, you took a sick day, you know, to try and again, these are not things that are, you know, that are widespread throughout the department. It's like every other contract that we have negotiated, the behavior of a few people has an outsized impact on the whole rest of the department. So, you know, that's not to say these things are widespread, but it happens enough that it has an impact on the rest of the department.
What's the penalty for that? I mean,
So
that happens
either-
in all companies too. So
Yeah, disciplinary action, basically. If you can't produce a note from your physician, then you would face disciplinary
the
action.
abuse of sick time, I worked with people in the Parks Department who worked 20 years and had literally no sick time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So along those lines, Corey, so.
They weren't sick.
What's,
well, they were sick waiting.
They're, yeah, different kind of sick.
so quantifying that, what does that sick time, how many hours per month or is that?
Is they accrued monthly? Are you giving them, you're giving them at the beginning of the year?
Which to me, because I'm looking at this slide, right, and it seems a little, it says if a member has more than 2 instances of sick leave within a rolling 6-month period, they have to provide a doctor's note. And I'm just a little, no, because that's a little excessive, because then down at the bottom, they have to utilize for 3 or more consecutive days, so.
It's instances versus consecutive days. So if you're out for 3 or more days, and this is pretty standard in other contracts, you need to provide a note saying why you've been out for 4 days, 3 or more days. The other one is, yeah, you're calling in sick every Friday, you know, or 4 Fridays during a 6-month period. If that happens more than twice, then we need to have a note from your doctor saying, do you have some sort of, I mean,
Or the day
you know.
after the Super Bowl.
or the day after the Super Bowl, or it's raining out, or, you know, any of the other things that.
So, I'm probably skipping ahead, but it's a miscellaneous. For instance, so what if they called in a child was sick?
Yeah, so this wouldn't be family sick leave. Family sick leave is separate than family leave, than sick leave. Because we didn't want to penalize people that are taking care of their family members.
That one sticks, that one just,
Hey, you know,
yeah.
So why is parental sick days just 20? Is it, so that would be 5 weeks?
yeah,
4 days a
so.
week, so 5
You
weeks?
guys are skipping ahead. Yeah, parental leave, so that's, so generally speaking on the last slide, parental leave, whether it's an officer who's given birth or, you know, generally an officer who's given birth would have to go to their personal time first, burn all of that, burn their vacation time, right? And then have to go to their sick time. And so what we've introduced here as a parental leave policy is that allowing them to use, if they have 20 sick days, they can use that first, and they don't have to burn through their personal time and their vacation time if they want to take parental leave. And that's parental leave, so it's not just maternity, it's parental. And, you know, and I think the leadership at SPD feel like in terms of recruitment and retention, this is something not all agencies offer, and so this could be an advantage for us as well.
Yeah, this was definitely, I mean, it's something we needed anyways. We needed to address. It was something that hasn't been addressed since I've been here for 17 years. But it was also a way to hopefully recruit more females into the department as well. So that's what we're hoping to do with that.
I'm still stuck on that 6 months.
I mean, you know, it's you know,
Because I call in maybe twice in 6 months and they don't make me bring in a doctor's note.
well, you know,
It's in a doctor in a day.
so it's more than 2 instances. And so instances isn't necessarily one day. If you got a stomach bug and then, you know, 3 months later you got a migraine or something, you know, those are 2 instances.
So what about the fact that, Corey, if I call in sick today, say today is Tuesday.
Today is.
And I'm getting sick all week, right? No,
Sorry,
I'm just-
sorry, that wasn't meant to be smart. I was just acknowledging.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. So say I call in today.
Yes.
And the rest of the week, I'm not any better. So what does that mean?
So
for
if
me?
you're going to be out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, by Thursday.
So that would be considered one instance?
That's one instance, yes,
Okay,
but you need
okay.
to have a note from your doctor.
Saying
after-
that I was
yeah,
out
on
for
the
this
third
long.
day, saying this is why you're out. And again, you know, this is relatively standard language through labor contracts
Okay.
to try and rein in sick time.
Is that the discretion of the supervisor, though?
So, I mean, you
I
know,
mean, the supervisor say if somebody's a good worker and all that.
I mean, all,
Is that discretion of the supervisor or not?
he said no.
It's right embedded in the contract.
right,
These aren't arbitrary rules in the
Yeah.
contract. We can't,
there's not a lot of
people
discretion
stick to
built.
these rules.
Right.
Like the rule, you like that one?
Yeah, I know there's some thought about that, you know, two instances in a rolling 6-month period, but this was a give and take in the contract. That schedule will not work if there is sick time use like we see it now, right? And we do see patterns of abuse every Friday or whatever. So we felt that this is a good carrot and stick, like Corey had talked about. We're given decent incentives, but we have some good teeth in this contract when it comes to sick time, and we need that. The administration, one of the goals was to rein in sick time, like we reined in bonus time in the previous contract.
But if I'm sick in December, and then I turn around as an officer, and I'm sick in June, I don't have to come back with a physician's note, right?
Right, because I think that's more than 6 months, right? Yeah, that's more than six
Oh, that's
months.
6 months.
Yeah. So if it's 2 instances within a 6-month period that goes through the calendar, then the third instance, you will need a note.
But a physician's note too can just mean you call your doctor, explain what the symptoms are, and they write you know. So when I was at the Port Authority, we did this exact thing, and it was good because people that are honest will call their doctor and say, "Hey doc, like I have a really bad headache today." He'll write them a note. It's only the bad guys that call every week. The doctor stops taking their calls, and then they have to come to work. So.
Well, I agree and I don't agree, because 6 months, so is it if you miss a day or 3 days?
So you have a sick instance, you're out for 2 days in January, and then in June, you're out for another 2 days. That's fine, those are only 2 instances. But, you know, if you were out in April and then again in June, you know, that's more than 2 instances. So if you're out in January, April, then you're out again in June.
So say I'm
Even
out
if it's a
today,
day.
And then I come to work, and I'm out again, April 5th, you know, a day. That means on April 5th, when I come back, I gotta have a doctor's note.
It's the next time.
The third time.
Yes, it's more than two instances, yeah. But if you had something in January and then something else in February, and then you don't call in again sick until August or September, you know, there was a 6-month period of time in between those, and so it's a rolling 6 months.
Okay, then.
Yeah, so it's 6 months. It's within a 6-month period, a rolling 6-month period.
How many hours, how many sick days do they get a year?
So now they're going to, I mean, we're trying to measure it in hours.
Yes, and which Corey,
So you would have
They would have 16.
16, for years 1 through 9, you would have 16 sick days. Or, you know, sick days. There are 166 sick hours.
But if everyone was using 16
Right.
sick days a year,
Right.
it would be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
So if someone was to put something in their medical note, like say there was a, you know, somebody has migraines, and you need a doctor to put something, so if they called in, they wouldn't have to keep getting a note.
you gotta come to the mic.
Really, that's just stuff that happens, like,
For the people watching at home.
I know, for people watching home. Amanda Harrington, Assistant Corporation Counsel. If there's a formal disability accommodation request, then that would be handled separately, outside of the normal sick leave rules. So they wouldn't be required to continually provide doctor's note.
Got like a
if
chronic.
they have a standing doctor's note that indicates that they're going to have, an adjusted schedule or some disability associated requirement.
And we make the same accommodations for someone who's injured and then has a chronic injury after that?
I don't necessarily want to speak to the injuries because I know the department handles them separately, whether they're on duty or off duty, so I can let one of the chiefs speak to that, but.
Go tell Joe Barry we noted he's absent. He has 2 more.
Oh, go ahead.
I just have a really quick question. It's about the COVID. So how are we handling COVID currently? Is there like a 5-day quarantine, therefore they're required not to work? How does that impact sick leave, and is it discretionary?
So currently with our COVID policy, if you test positive, you get 5 days COVID. If it's 3 days your work week, 3 days your day off, and then you can come back on your Monday. We cover those 3 days. It doesn't go towards their sick leave. So it wouldn't count as an instance.
And how many COVIDs can you get in a year?
Wow.
I believe 3.
Wow.
3?
Well, Corey's testing that.
Well, yeah, with Tim
I'm not
coughing next to
trying
me, I'll let you know.
Beat this down, right? But I just gotta ask this and be quiet.
Beat it down.
Because I can't change your contract. This is what you adjusted. But for me, where is it? It moved. You moved it. That's okay. That's okay. But for me, 3 and 4 basically are kind of the same.
So it's days versus instances is basically what it is. Is that if you have,
Either way, you gotta come back with a doctor's note.
right. But I mean, if you have one,
Instance.
3-day long instance,
Then you're okay.
but if you have, a 2-day instance and then a 3-day instance, it's basically just consecutive days that you can't be out for 3 or more consecutive days without telling us. But instances could be any number of days.
And how do you guys do is after Super Bowl?
Chiefs,
Same as DPW.
do you have any, do you have the issues that some other departments do with the day after Super Bowl, nobody shows up? No. I mean,
Not this, maybe not this year, but not in previous years.
yeah. Again, I think the use of sick leave is not, is not widespread throughout the department. It's that there are a handful of instances of abuse that has an impact on everybody else. And I think those folks who were in the room on the negotiating team from PBA understood that reality that, and again, as Chief Trudell said, we made it clear that, in order to make this schedule work, we have to make changes to sick time. It's just, we can't do one without the other.
Officers that's out on injured
So that's a whole different,
or desk duty, they're inside
people who are injured, how does this
Or
impact
on
people?
desk duty.
Or desk duty? Does the sick leave rules apply, or is it?
Just
So
a
if
sick
somebody's
leave,
injured
all
on
of it.
duty, they're on 207C time. So that's not your sick time. It's not an instance of sick. If you're an off-duty injury, then yes, you're using sick time for off-duty injuries.
But the salary, how does that apply to them? It's the same, right?
Yes.
Salary changes?
Salaries.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not
Salaries
unique
for
to
everybody.
patrol.
Okay.
Okay. I don't even know.
We're running low on time. What we got?
Well, just the actual carrot, right, for the sick leave incentive. So currently it is a $300 payment quarterly. So 4 times a year up to $1,200 for basically having perfect attendance in that quarter. So you could have a really bad quarter where you have a whole bunch of sick leave, and then you could still get $900. But the new way it gets restructured such that it's an annual payment, and you get, and it's a buyback, which Corey described before, so you're basically getting paid for your time that you're buying back, which is good because it limits the accrual moving forward. But, and it makes it such that it's for the whole year. So if you have 0 absences, you get 80 hours paid out. If you have 1 absence, you get 50. If you have 2, you get 3. So if you had one really bad quarter with a whole bunch, you're not going to get it for the whole year. It does increase that payment, right? So before the cap was $1,200. So if you had perfect attendance for the whole year, or you didn't call out sick, not perfect attendance, but you didn't call out sick at all the whole year, then you would be getting at the step 5 pay, like almost $4,700 more. So it does substantially pay for the people who do show up.
Need to be a cop.
I told you that. Let's go. Me and you.
Undercover.
So just to bring us home, the miscellaneous changes on the last slide. So parental leave, we talked about. Call-in time was just something that we needed to clarify, whereas that, you know, officers that are off duty, if they do something, you know, phone call, an email, or something that doesn't require a physical response that lasts less than 30 minutes, that doesn't qualify as call-in, so that is not eligible for 4 hours of overtime. And then finally, just a uniform allowance, which hasn't been increased in quite some time. So those are the changes.
So even if you are calling for overtime and you come in for 1 hour, that
No,
qualifies for 4 hours?
No, because that would be more than 30 minutes. But if you take a phone call and it takes you 8 minutes to, you know, talk to your supervisor or talk to your coworker, you're not going to get 4 hours
Right.
of overtime because of that.
But
But
I'm
no,
saying-
if you report to work or, you know, and it's more than 30 hours, you're getting 30 minutes,
Yeah,
you're getting the
4
overtime.
hours.
Yes.
That's,
Which again, is pretty standard across labor contracts that,
Corey, I have a quick question before we
Yes,
do.
Counselor.
So going back to the hours that you bank and then you can get upon retirement, what if you're not retiring and you're leaving for another job or you're being asked to leave? Can you still get it?
I don't, no, it's only upon retirement?
Just upon retirement.
my,
So
my,
could we clarify, so on the proposed sick leave
Mm-hmm.
incentive, it says if 0 sick days is annually, so you get that back once a year?
So,
In
yes.
a lump sum,
So-
separate from your regular paycheck?
Correct. Yes, you can sell back 80 hours
Okay, per year.
per year, which then, you know, obviously reduces your accruals, which, you know, the less sick time people are carrying, the better it is for us.
So if you don't sell back and you keep it and you hit your maximum, then you get all that at retirement. Otherwise, every year you can.
my question is in regard to the parental leave.
Why? Because you finna have another thing?
It's not too late,
Oh,
Counselor.
go there, Madam President. You're gonna give me nightmares.
No, we don't have any limit on how many times you can take parental leave. That's what you're asking.
He would have 6 uses already.
Can I just ask my question? So,
Parental leave retroactive.
Oh, Tim, you don't need to talk either. You right behind me.
he is. So 20 days, right?
Yes.
20 days.
Yes.
Now, has there been any negotiation? Because when you think, you know, it's coming back to work for just 20 days.
I mean,
No, that's 20 days, it's your sick time, then you can still use your
you
other
can,
personal
yeah, you can
use-
still use
Okay, so
other time.
up to, okay.
Right, but before you would have to exhaust
So that's at
all
least
your
4
personal
weeks,
time,
okay.
all your vacation time before you
addition.
could touch your sick time. And what we're saying is you can start by using 20 days of your sick time, and then after that, if you want to use your vacation or personal or other paid time
But
off, you
that's
can
not
do
on
that.
here. The personal and vacation, all that's not.
I mean,
on here.
it's
just not described.
It's not described in the PowerPoint, but it's outlined in the tentative agreement.
Because it's not changing, right?
Because, yeah,
It's not changing.
you could still use that time like you do now, but what we're saying is you're allowed to use 20 sick days first before you exhaust all that other time.
Okay, because I just feel a certain way about that, but and
I agree.
Any parent out there knows that, you know, if they can stay a little bit with their children,
Agreed.
you know, they will take it. And I feel like with this much, with the city being so generous with time off and sick time, I would take that we would be more lenient toward parents, especially mothers.
So I mean, you can go beyond those sick days if you want to then move to personal time or vacation. It's just that right now, you don't have any choice. You can't use sick time until you've burned through all your other time.
They don't get FMLA?
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah, that's part of the law.
Do they qualify?
Yeah,
Come
but
on.
you're not, yeah.
I'll let you speak next.
Everybody's favorite acronym.
If I had all the kids that Counselor Majoke had, I'd want to go back to work.
Rick Elsuva, Director of Human Resources. To your point, they would qualify for FMLA, but FMLA is protected and unpaid.
Yeah.
So
I thought we had paid FMLA, we don't?
FMLA just
FMLA
means
is
we
never
can't,
paid.
we can't give your job away, but we're not paying you while you're out.
Come on, man.
That's feds.
No,
That's
I
not
mean-
us. That's feds.
Yeah, that's.
I'm done having babies, so don't think I'm fighting for me.
So we,
Right, right. I mean, you could be out on FMLA and use your paid time if you
yeah,
want.
so the idea is to pair them. You take FMLA time, so we protect your job. We can't give away your job. You have to come back to the same job. And on top of that, we're allowing you to use the time. So you get the protection, and then we allow you to use the time. So we're giving them a benefit that kind of helps them bridge the gap of unpaid leave.
Right.
You guys have a sick bank, so say one officer wanted to give their other hours to another officer. You have that available?
Through the PBA, there is a PBA sick bank that once they use up all their sick time, if they still need to be out, then they can apply for that time. And just to clarify with the maternity leave, this is an extra 20 days. Anytime a female officer is having a baby, they aren't denied time off. They can take as much time as they have during that time. So it's not like they're putting in against other officers that want a Friday night off and we're going to make them come back earlier because there's too many people off. They're going to get as much time as they want to stay home.
But are they paid?
Yes, because they're using their time.
Okay.
They're using either their sick time, their furlough time, their
Okay, that's what I
personal
was.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
See,
So they'll meet with,
you got me a little.
No, no worries. We
Okay.
take
The
care of
wife is not a cop.
I know. Okay.
I think we got to thank Corey and Tim and the
Yeah.
police
Yes.
department.
Yes.
I mean, President Hudson and I voted on a lot of these, and this is like the ability to plan ahead, not sweating out arbitration, not sweating out retro pay, anything else. This is a big deal, for the city going forward as far as the budget.
And we're current, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and we'll be current on all labor contracts are current.
Really great job.
And who would have thought 4 years ago that
Tim
Tim
Rudd
Rudd and
with
I
the
would be
police
sitting
department
next to
who
each
worked
other, selling you a police contract? I feel like that's the biggest accomplishment.
And come on, Rod. So without any other questions, I want to thank everybody on behalf of finance and public safety. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Corey.
Counselors.
Thank you, Chief.